When it comes to valuing a business, because we are on the valuing side of things, what are the key factors that you look at, and how do you determine the true worth of a business?
So to start with the easy answer, typically you'll look at the financials of a business, gross revenue, profit margin, or cost of goods and services, payroll, overhead expenses, and such. And you get to net income. There's a exercise you have to go through to accurately clean up the numbers so that you get the truth of how much revenue, how much income is coming out of the business. Whether you're looking at tax returns or whatever it is, you got to be able to know how to clean that up. So you get to a clean number and then you come up with a multiple. That is what most people understand when they're looking at valuing a business, and that's short-sighted and very myopic and very unfortunately not complete, right?
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. One. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. In this episode, we sit down with Orlando M. Rivera, a seasoned business broker, advisor, and investor. As the CEO and founder of ASPIRA Business Brokers, Orlando has a wealth of experience in the business consulting and real estate. Join us as we delve into how the rapid changes in the world are impacting business sales, investments, and the real estate market. Discover Orlando's insights on navigating these shifts and what the future holds for business owners and investors alike. Orlando, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Before we begin on the in-depth questions, I just want to ask, can you give us a quick intro on who Orlando is? What's your experiences, your expertise, and what keeps you busy these days?
Okay. My experiences, my entire life has been really focused around entrepreneurship. And the way I'm defining entrepreneurship has been problem solving.
Yeah.
uh, to make a living, to make a lifestyle, whatever you want. So at a very young age, I came out of poverty, and I had realized that entrepreneurship legally would be a great way to create financial independence and freedom. And regardless of what opportunities were out there or not, I created them. So um, I went through my academic life and career always doing something else. And so it wasn't until about 15 years ago or so, or 14 years ago, that I had discovered business brokering. And it just seemed to have captured everything I love. I loved real estate investments and that form of creating wealth. And I also liked ongoing concerns, creating businesses that offer value in the world and creating wealth that way. So those were my two favorite asset classes, if you will. And when someone introduced to me this type of profession, it just seemed to be perfect to encapsulate both. So since then, I've been doing this, basically advising others and buying and selling privately held businesses, um, and that's what we focus on for the most part. We are a real estate brokerage office as well. We do real estate independent, primarily commercial real estate, uh, and business together, or just business. But for the most part, the M&A space with Main Street and lower middle market deals are what's keeping us busy for sure.
I think on our last conversation, we talked about before you were 20, you've had a lot of different jobs and switch careers like crazy. Do you mind letting us know why do you do that?
Why did I do that? Uh, Curiosity, I guess. One thing that I would recommend anyone to do, I don't care what age you're in, I really don't. I don't care if you're 16 or if you're 66. I think if you want to learn about something, you should probably put your hands on it and do it. So, as you mentioned, by the time I was 20, I probably had seven different professions, if you will, or very disparate activities. One of which was getting my EMT license at the age of 17. I thought I would become an emergency room doctor, saving lives and putting people back together, if you will, and healing people. Um, I've always, the common theme was in all of them, though, was to help others and making a quality of life better for others as well. So, with the medicine side, I was curious about that because um, I just happen to like science. I liked that means of helping others. I had gotten, as I mentioned, one of the things got accepted to an accelerated program with a guaranteed seat in medical school. So that was great. But having gone out in the field as an EMT with my paramedic instructor, I just realized that there was too much trauma for me, and the emotional connections to it wasn't the way I wanted to show up. So then I interned at Lockheed Martin. Just at Lockheed and Martin Marietta had merged back in the 90s. And it was there at the age of 18 that I realized it was too slow of a process for me. I like to be a balance of the math science, but also interacting with other people. Trying to think of all the other things I mentioned to you, but those are kind of two examples of things that I thought, really helped me help others. And now I think having that background in accounting, in law, in art, in medicine, in engineering, you name it. Even again, the hustle, like learning how to cut hair and being a barber, and doing that my freshman year of undergrad college, as a way to kind of make some money. Um, it really kind of uh, is the specifics behind the bigger picture of being an entrepreneur, as I mentioned earlier. So, but now again, I really like helping others. The goal is to help others create that financial freedom through business ownership. I feel like and then I literally learned when I discovered the idea of buying and selling privately held businesses, I had discovered the fast, accelerated way to become a business owner by acquiring something that's already existing. And it also was the means to reduce risk because you already knew what was built. It's there. There's no question about it. The question is, can you step up and actually add value to this and grow it? And so, anyway, I hope that answered your question in terms of all that background and why I did it and why I'm here.
So basically, business brokerage is so exciting that it managed to tie you down into one spot.
You know what? Yes, the
Yeah,
business brokering side of things keeps things interesting. I get to meet with so many different hardworking, smart business owners from all different industries and backgrounds in various sizes. That even if I met this a business owner who's in the same industry, you name it, even something simple as a pizzeria, I learned something totally different in what one owner has done with a different business based on location, menu type, the demographics. Everything that's challenging from pricing to what how do you produce something that people want and
yeah,
make a living by it. So it's always something new. I don't think it'll ever die. I mean, I think if you think about business and the economics and the industry and the world affairs, you name it, it's constantly changing.
yeah.
You look at what happened for me in my space in the time period 2008 with the uh, real estate bubble, if you will. They called it the banking crisis, if you will. And then later in 2020 with COVID, you know, there are a lot of challenges. It's a very dynamic environment, a dynamic profession. So I don't think I'll ever be bored.
When when you first founded Aspira, what was the biggest challenges that you've encountered, especially because you're just new?
The you know, well, I had already been. I had started my career with Tannenbaum Business Brokers, and they were around since 1946. The largest and longest running private business brokerage that I knew of, anyway, in the country. And I immediately, uh, within a year, I was sitting in the presidency. I was driving the ship. I was hiring, firing, innovating with new systems. There's a lot of different things there. But one thing I've noticed uh, was that the industry is very fragmented. There is no consistent means of doing what we do. There's no licensing requirements. I'm not proposing we do have them, but there are issues and other ways we can probably fix this. And so for me, I think the thing that I formed Aspira was to really offer a greater value to business owners, and specifically the small to medium sized business owners, because there were not a lot of truly qualified professionals in the space to advise and help these business owners. A lot of times they would end up, their effort to sell would be unsuccessful. And, it was just a shame. So there's a lot of unrealized equity out there with the business that I'm hoping to help business owners capture.
Uh, what type of businesses, on occasion, do you usually help your clients by? What type of businesses?
That depends on the buyer. That depends
Yeah.
on the individual, right? So if this is the first time you're buying something, perhaps a smaller business would be better. But then again, the buyer may need a certain income lifestyle. So there are uh, MBA graduates, 24 years old, um, coming out and buying multi-million-dollar companies. So in terms of size, I think it really reflects more um, the goals that the individual has, along with the resources that they have.
Do you think that buying an established business is for someone who wants a business but doesn't want the hassle of trying to start something?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you think if someone wants a business but doesn't want to actually go through the hassle of trying to start a business, that they should just outright buy a business?
Not always, but I think if you're just simply looking to show up a certain way
Yeah,
and and be your own boss,
yeah,
then for the majority, great majority, I would say
yeah,
buying an existing business is just a great way to do it.
yeah,
The only reason you would probably start something your own is that you're really innovating, right? You're going from that zero to one, something that never existed. You got to build that. But if you're going, if you if you have a background, let's say you've been working, say, just an example of someone who's a little more seasoned, say 20 years, 10, 15 years experience in uh, cabinet making, and you work with a company that's a statewide company, it's a pretty big company, but you've been the right hand man, you've been running the entire company. Well, or you have management experience. Well, you clearly have direct industry experience. You may have dreamed that you want to become business owner um, of this type of business. And for sure, I think buying something that's already there is the smartest way to do it. I've done both, and it's much easier to get something that's already there to improve on. Going from scratch, starting from scratch from zero is somehow painfully difficult, even if you already done it before. It's just challenging, time consuming, exha- exhausting.
From your experience, what's the biggest reason someone buys a business, and what's the biggest reason someone sells their business?
The biggest reason someone sells their business,
Yeah,
believe it or not, is burnout. They are burned out. They are tired. They're exhausted. Basically, or bored. There could be health reasons. It could be industry shifts. Um, let's say that there's a new rule that somehow has to do with employment. and it's just aggravating at this point. The person says there's too many changes. They've been through all the waves, and they're finally just tired. They want to move on. So it's not that the business is going to blow up. It is not normally that the business is failing. Typically, when I have a client who's selling and when we represent them, they have a very profitable business with consistent income. So, for example, we have a signed franchise business right now. He's retiring, moving out of state. A dealership out of Delaware, retiring, purely retirement age. So I say burnout, but kind of to say that you get kind of tired one reason or another. On the buying side, I've never interviewed them specifically to get their direct answer on why they're looking to buy. But I think they've been typically either they're fed up with the current circumstances or they've been forced to kind of look for other options to provide an income. And they see the attraction in becoming their own boss and taking control of their own financial future.
That's amazing. So, just to clarify, for the people who are selling their businesses, most of the time they're near the retirement age and they just don't want to handle all of these things anymore.
Well, no, it could also be someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be age. I mean, it could be someone young. I think the youngest was a franchisee, a couple who were probably. I'm trying to think of the youngest, probably around 25. They, I think, 26. They bought it, and then 3 years later, they were looking to sell, and mostly because they were looking to get out of state. Um, so uh, age isn't necessarily the primary reason. Again, I would just say for some reason, on an emotional level, they're just ready to move on. Maybe they're
Yeah,
looking to try a different business. But
yeah,
if you had a career, you can just put your letter of resignation in, 2 weeks notice, and then move on to the next job and try something different.
yeah,
You can't do that when you're a business owner, right? So there's a process you have to go through. You definitely want to capture that equity, put it
yeah.
in the market, sell it through a third party, um, is how we help them, and then help them find another business to buy, or they can just look for a part-time job or whatever it is.
So, most of the time, their heart is not in the business anymore. That's the reason most of the time they sell, or if they're moving.
That seems to be, again, there's a lot of specifics behind why you're tired and burned out of it, but uh, it's amazing that you have to be. Here's something I'll point out.
Yeah,
You might be surprised by is that business ownership isn't necessarily a straightforward
yeah,
financial decision. It isn't just a numbers thing. So, in terms of making a living, that's not the issue. The issue is about the lifestyle that you live.
yeah,
And people don't have the same lifestyle forever. There's seasons to a life, and you can go through those seasons at a young age or older age.
yeah,
Um, uh, so,
yeah,
I'm not sure how else to explain it.
yeah. How has the business brokerage landscape changed from when you started Aspira to now?
In some ways, it hasn't changed much,
Yeah,
and in others, it's changed a lot. So, I think when it comes to um, the process and the innovations of the industry, it's been very minimal, extremely minimal. Even with the advent of AIs, I'm sure you want to talk about, uh, the industry is just slow to change and doesn't have to do anything else to change. I think those who are doing a little more modern things and incorporating technology would probably be the online business brokers. But other than that, we're still passing checks in paper. We're still doing closings in person. Like, we're still doing a lot of those things. Um, but as for the type of clientele we have, small business, medium sized businesses, what's happening to them is radically changing and different over the decade or so. Um, it's it's fast changing because of regulation. It's fast changing because of just consumer change. Um, there's a lot of things that impact them. So even the market of pricing it, uh, that's changing because of credit lines and availability of cash or other things. So the methodology and the approach is pretty much the same, but the businesses we're dealing with are constantly in flux.
In your opinion, is business brokerage more exciting than real estate?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You know, so in residential real estate, for example, where I started
yeah,
um, my journey as well, there was an aspect there. I did residential real estate, and that got pretty boring really fast. I mean, it was like, you can value a home pretty well with, I don't mean to minimalize it because there's a lot of professionals out there, of course, that will see the nuance and they're very good at that. But it was just so much. It wasn't as fun, and I didn't like the lifestyle for myself. So talking about lifestyle for buyers and sellers of businesses, for me, I just didn't like working nights, weekends, holidays. It just wasn't for me. So in the real estate, say commercial real estate space, um, it's uh, it's very easy to kind of compare based on comparables and public record information and such. So you can see per square foot value or what other method you're using in terms of comparing properties and based on their use and such. Um, but with business transactions, there is no readily available resource for everyone just to grab and compare. So it's both a science and an art, and the
yeah.
art is creatively is immensely challenging and fun. So I for that reason I love it.
So basically, there's not a lot of copy paste in the business brokerage side of things, unlike real estate.
Yeah, again, not to minimize it as minimal, to diminish the effort of those
Yeah,
professionals in terms of like copy and paste, but there's just a lot more resources and a lot more. It is just easier to figure out, right?
yeah,
And but in again, business, even if you have the same type of business in the same county with the same cash flow, you can't value them the same
yeah,
because there's a lot of story that goes into the value of a business.
yeah,
And so you have the same cash flow business, but let's say one has 3-year contracts to 5-year contracts. Everything has a long-term customer, whereas this one here has no contracts and has to hunt every year for a brand new customer, and in fact has zero retention for some reason. Their business model, one's
yeah,
kind of project oriented, and one has residual recurring revenue. That story aspect of that revenue or that income radically changes the value of the business.
yeah,
And there's dozens of variables that will impact the value, and not
yeah,
only the value, but also who might be most interested in buying that business, who's a better match. So there's a matchmaking aspect to it that we help with buyers in that transition. And so we're always looking to make it a fair deal for everybody, buyers and sellers,
yeah.
even if we're representing only one side.
When it comes to valuing a business, because we are on the valuing side of things, what are the key factors that you look at, and how do you determine the true worth of a business?
So to start with the easy answer,
Yeah,
typically you look at the financials of a business, gross revenue, profit margin, or cost of goods and services, payroll, overhead expenses, and such, and you get to net income. There's a exercise you have to go through to accurately clean up the numbers so that you get the truth of how much revenue, how much income is coming out of the business. Whether you're looking at tax returns or whatever it is, you got to be able to know how to clean that up. So you get to a clean number, and then you come up with a multiple. That is what most people understand when they're looking at valuing a business, and that's short-sighted and very myopic and very unfortunately not complete, right? Because the story aspect in terms of valuing the business are the things that would impact the value is how involved is the owner in the business? How many hours does the owner work? Do they have any special roles or relationships that only they can provide in this business? Right. So can we detach the owner? How transferable it is? Also, again, that's lifestyle stuff, but also other, like I said, story aspects that will impact or push up those values. I tend to look at, in terms of a multiple, I would prefer someone look at the bottom line because that's what's disposable to a buyer to pay debt service to be able to acquire it, or provide a return on their investment, cash on cash returns, and provide that lifestyle. So they can peg that risk off of the net number. But again, I would say the basic financials, historical, is it trending up or down, those kind of things. And then on the stories part, it's the lifestyle definition of how hard do you have to work? Is, what do the hours look like? Um, what is for that buyer, what is the likelihood of the future income still being there? And that's the story aspect.
For anyone who might want to sell their business that is listening, what can you advise to them so that their business would be so attractive to the buyers?
Yeah. So there's a lot there. I think the first thing is most business owners have built their business around them and the lifestyle they want. So if there's something they can't do or don't want to do, they're going to hire for that. But a lot of times they still have their role in the business. So they just have to think about a way to remove themselves off the organizational chart, the org chart on the payroll, in the management and employment of the company. If they can move themselves off, I don't care what size they are, if they're small or medium size, if they can kind of think about moving themselves off as a shareholder, if you will, kind of like how Bill Gates was a CEO, or Jeff Bezos was a CEO, but then he's moved off, right, into the shareholder side. Um, Try to remove yourself off of that. There's a lot of ways to do that. Do the research, get advice and consultation. Perhaps we can help with that. That's the first and biggest thing. The second thing is, if you have ideas and you have the energy to implement those ideas, then do so. So a lot of owners will tell me, "Oh, this will make a lot of money if you do this, A. If you do A, you'll make X number of income." Well, I think it's important that you figure out how to implement that, especially if it's easy and it's going to increase revenue. Then do that as well. So show that trend, show the potential in the business. Those are my big pictures recommendations. I constantly advise, only because I'm having the conversation every day with an owner who says these kind of things, thinks that, well, someone else can do that. Problem is, if you don't have the stomach to do it or the energy to do it, um, then that's just what you might call pie in the sky. It's future opportunity. And that's what the buyer will be able to capture in the deal. But they're going to pay you the value of your business based on what have you already built. If you built it to a $1 million company, then you're going to get paid for that $1 million company. If you built it to a $10 million company, then you're going to get paid for that. So you got to be able to implement as well. And I would say you can make some of these changes and get a radically bigger valuation, depending on the industry, within 18 months to 36 months. Online businesses, you can build something in 12 months and you look at trailing 12 months and you have a value right there. So just get to work. For brick and mortar type businesses, it might take a little longer because, those things move a little slower and they're priced off of typically 3 years minimum or 2 years minimum.
Now, when you're looking at a business, what are the common mistakes of a business or the things they do that just makes you want to run the other direction?
In terms of representing someone,
Now, in terms of trying and looking at businesses for your buyers who wants to buy a business.
yeah, there's a lot. There is so many things that can really cause some concern here. I think first and foremost, it's the level of trust that you have in the individual owner. You got to get that first. Um, and you can feel that a lot of times. You can kind of get a sense for that. But you can also get a sense for not only the interaction with the owner, but also the way the books are put together. So, I mean, it was really bad financial controls. I mean, we're talking about a cash-based business. That can be really tough uh, for a lot of people. And by the way, there's a whole market for that as well. So there are people who have cash-based businesses and there are people who are looking for purely cash-based businesses to buy, and that's a match made in heaven again. But in general, we're looking at documentable businesses uh, that's going to be more attractive. Um, and if somebody's asking you to do something, like if an owner or a seller is trying to ask for something that doesn't seem right, that's also an issue. So yeah, I would just leave it at that in terms of the answer. Yeah.
What are quick fixes that you usually see a business can just do in the first few months that would make their business value go higher? The quick fixes.
You're asking a lot of tough questions. All these questions really need, I mean, hours of answer. I mean,
Yeah,
this takes a whole days, whatever training, education, and it's case by case
yeah,
situation in terms of how you would actually improve the business. I already covered those things that if you think about the things that create the impact your value,
yeah,
work on those, right? So again, uh, most business owners know what they need to do; they're just not doing it.
yeah,
The difference isn't knowing what to do; it's actually implementing it.
yeah.
That's the biggest gap of getting there isn't whether you know it; it's whether you're willing to do it for business owners. And
So most of the time, you're saying that they already have an idea of what they should do. They don't just execute.
yes, even if you worked on just that without talking to
Yeah,
someone, you're going to do well. Like I think um, Ken Blanchard, a management guru, I got to meet with him in a workshop, and he really pointed this out, and it kind of stuck with me, and it's true
yeah,
for most people, which is even if you've never been exposed to something,
yeah,
like you don't have it. Let's say you're a business owner, you just started this thing, and you're like look at yourself as an example. Let's
yeah,
say you are a digital marketing expert and you help others with their online presence.
yeah,
You don't necessarily even have a degree in education necessarily in accounting or
yeah,
finance, but and maybe you don't have much exposure outside of your own personal finances and balancing your own
yeah,
checkbook. Okay. Nonetheless, I think you intuitively know what you should be doing regarding your finances and your accounting.
yeah,
You do know at the very least, well, you got to keep track of all your expenses. You do know at the very least, you have to be able to, on some level of frequency, like once a week or once a month, be able to see how much money you made and how much expenses you've had
yeah,
and see whether you're profitable or not. Very simple, plus, minus, you get your net. And then you also know that you have to think about the future. Everyone knows these
yeah,
common sense things. They really just stop for a second. You can kind of map that out. The problem is when you're talking to yourself, you immediately have multiple voices in your head saying, I can't do that. Why? Because you're immediately putting the brakes on in your own mind and saying, I don't have the time. I don't have the education. I don't feel like it. I just don't want to do accounting or bookkeeping. I don't want to touch that. That's not why I did this. Well, unfortunately, you're a business owner
yeah.
now. You're responsible for this. And so you have to get it done. You have to figure it out, solve the problem, get it done. Now you
Oh
can
man,
hire someone, right?
yeah,
But you still need ultimately to have a standard in life and standard in your services you expect and offer to others that will keep you out of trouble at the very
yeah,
least. So you know what to do. You know what you need
yeah,
to do. Now, but if you're smart, yes, you would reach out to someone and say, look, you're the expert in this. Please help me get this set up. Help me get my accounting system set up. Talk to a CPA, whoever.
yeah,
What software do I need? How do I track it? What's the best way for me to run my business? Now, the problem is, and since I use the accounting, by the way, I would say please avoid the trap of just getting an accountant for one purpose. And in the United States, that's to file the tax returns. So everyone's doing tax accounting. Everyone is tracking their expenses based on whether it's deductible or not.
yeah,
But unfortunately, you should have a different accounting. Kind of running onto another topic here, but you should have um, uh, financial controls accounting system in place or bookkeeping system in place to allow you to make good decisions in your business. So, for example, in a complete circle, complete picture, you might want to keep track of your costs so that your accounting reports, your financial reports can help you see where you bright yellow, hey, focus on this. This will get you better margin. This is an area you need to pay attention to. Or if it's finance accounting, like you're trying to figure out how to get financing to grow, you need to you need statements that allow you to do that and make decisions so that you are financeable and so forth. So um, there are some things that you just don't know. You have to
Yeah,
ask, but getting started, you can you can easily get to work on those right away, and at the very least, like I said, stay out of trouble.
yeah. Oh man, you touch a nerve there. Doing the books is so boring. Yeah. Do you usually negotiate on the behalf of your clients, or do you just teach them how to do it?
So I'm doing it for them. I am
Yeah,
representing them. I am their agent or
yeah,
their broker. I'm they are the client, so they are
yeah,
basically I'm leading the way and doing it. You know, when negotiating, I'm the point of contact.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm the one. I'm the face of the client in all communications with buyers, or even with other parties, third parties.
yeah,
So I'm also trying to help in the sale process. For example, if there's a landlord, there's a
yeah,
third party approval for the transfer of the lease. If there's a franchisor in place, I'm usually trying to coordinate and communicate with the franchisor
yeah,
to make sure the buyer is qualified, get everybody, make sure everybody's happy, so that
yeah,
a deal can be made. There can be government requirements and licensing requirements. So
yeah,
there's a lot of moving parts, but we're the facilitator. We are the spear of the effort, as well as the hub of all the
yeah.
activity.
Do you usually do you have any tips on negotiation? Yeah,
Any tips on negotiation?
yeah,
Wow. So I never talked or taught on negotiation actually. So uh, I would say what works for me is always being honest and transparent.
yeah,
Uh, I know there's there's differences of opinions here, but I think if you're working or finding the right
yeah,
players, the match or partners, or whatever, um, I think earning trust and maintaining that trust is first and foremost.
yeah,
When there's no trust, things start to fall apart. Um, Secondly, time. Move at a certain pace and keep the momentum going because time kills deals.
yeah,
So if you take too long at any stage of the deal or get stuck at any stage of the deal, it's going to fall apart.
yeah,
In terms of negotiating things like price and stuff and terms, a lot of that has to do
yeah,
with uh, objectively defending value.
yeah,
Oh, there could be a range in that, and that really is dependent then from the parties involved.
yeah,
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
yeah,
So again, if you get the right eyeballs and people, right, then you're not. This is not a contentious negotiation. And
yeah,
generally speaking, I can't think of except maybe one or two. You know, our negotiations aren't contentious at all.
yeah,
It's very collaborative, and everyone's just. I like to think of expanding the pie to solve the problem so everybody's happy. It's a win-win-win
yeah,
solution, not a lose win situation. I don't like the zero sum game where there's only a limited deal in the pie, and you got to just the more for you, you got to take away from the
yeah,
other. That's never been my philosophy at all.
yeah,
So if you can think of that from that perspective, always looking at the win-win-win situation in negotiating,
yeah.
that's a good philosophy to lead with.
Is it important that both parties feel like they won? so that the deal can actually go through.
Yeah, not only feel like they won, but actually won. I think it's
Yeah,
important that they actually know they won because to feel like you win is to imply that you feel like you got something, but you didn't
yeah,
see the big picture, so you may or may not have, you
yeah,
know, uh, screwed something up.
yeah,
I think we try to educate buyers,
yeah,
even if we're representing sellers,
yeah,
try to educate them so they can make a good decision for themselves.
yeah,
A fully informed decision,
yeah,
hopefully. And a lot of things the decisions are outside of our control. It's up to them. They have to put their big boy pants on and run with
yeah,
it. But no, it's they really should know what they're getting into, and feel like they got to win
yeah,
because they got something that's going to help them that they can actually be successful with.
yeah. The COVID-19 pandemic really shook things up for a lot of people, especially for a lot of businesses. Did you see that there's a lot less people who are interested and also interested in selling or buying? There's a lot less of them because of it.
Y- Yeah, interesting question. So, uh, when times are bad, there's more deal flow for us. A lot
Really?
more transactions, yes. Sellers are more motivated to sell because remember, with COVID putting pressure on someone, it's like, geez, yet another thing, right? And you've been in business
Yeah,
for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years. You've been through a lot. And sometimes you just at that point where you're just tired of it.
yeah.
So a lot more business owners were very, in my opinion, in my experience, was a lot more interested in selling their business. Uh,
What, what
but the
about buyers?
buyers became extremely interested. So I'm gonna give you this three parts, right? So the
Yeah,
first was much more interested in selling. More of them were willing to make that effort. More buyers came out of the woodwork, mostly because I think they felt like they can get a deal.
yeah,
They felt like, oh, these businesses are hurt, they're on the ropes. I know they're going to come back, but I can
yeah,
buy low and build high
yeah,
and bring it back. I will take on the risk. Um, Unfortunately, the third thing is uh, there wasn't a lot of deals happening
yeah,
because of that big gap. The owners, the sellers, more sellers want to sell, but they're going to hold on because they didn't feel like they want to be taken advantage of, and they
yeah,
didn't feel like some wolves are trying to come in and um, steal what they had, right?
yeah,
And buyers were like also scaring themselves and saying, "Well, I want a deal, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future, so I don't want to offer a high price."
yeah,
And so there were made up problems and also legitimate problems and challenges, obstacles between both to make deals. So if anything would happen was for me anyway, for us, there were less deals happening during
yeah.
COVID
So basically, they're both scared. Yeah,
for different reasons.
yeah,
And then with there were other issues with sellers, their concerns about other things. But yeah, the buyers and sellers will always be scared. Look, you can't be an entrepreneur, or business owner if you're not willing to take on some risk.
yeah,
The truth is, no matter what you do and how you do it, uh, there's a chance that tomorrow this won't happen, right?
yeah,
Like you just may not wake up in the morning tomorrow, not because of COVID, but just
yeah,
because you had a stroke.
yeah,
God forbid it ever happens to anyone, but that can happen to your family and your business. Are you prepared for it? Majority of business owners are not prepared for that
yeah,
right now. They have not put a contingency plan in for their business if something like that happened. The proverbial got hit by the bus. So, in terms of risk, you just got to identify it and plan for it, and you'll be
yeah,
fine. Um, but yeah, I hope that answered your question.
yeah. Technology and automation, especially AI, is changing the game for a lot of industries. How do you see it, changing the business brokerage side of things?
Listen, there's a lot of technology that isn't new that could
Yeah,
be used to help this industry in our business. We're just not using it. Um, but I think with us with AI, I think a lot of it is just doing what we do normally faster, right?
yeah,
So in our office, Um, 10 years ago, we implemented electronic signatures as a standard price for everything. So that was the first time, rather than someone having to print and fax it back.
Yeah.
We weren't ahead of the curve, but late adopting it, but we were ahead of all the other business brokers
Yeah.
doing it at the time. So with a link, you can complete a document, file and sign a document. Um, Recently, last say 5 6 years, we've incorporated automation with autoresponders and things that really customize the responses and serve buyers better, so they can get taken care of 24/7.
Yeah.
There are some things though, again, that will probably never change. Like the AI is not going to change because I look at us as a tech enabled service company, and the service side of things is the human to human interaction. You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
that hopefully, I'm going to say hopefully will never change, at least in my own desire and prediction, because um, I I don't see the internet or robots coming up anytime to
Yeah.
physically meet with you, tour a facility, um, among other things, to figure out whether this is something you'd like to buy. However, I do know also as an academic exercise, I'm sure I could probably figure out a way, because they've already proven this through COVID,
Yeah.
that everything can be turned into online. So we're just not, I guess the question is, depending on the brokers, are you willing to innovate? I would say in the industry, most are not willing to innovate, but to whatever time period that they're at. Um, our office is looking to the future to create proprietary
Yeah.
software, innovating off of AI, so that we can literally have a marketplace for buying and selling privately held businesses.
Yeah.
And audacious, bold goal is to create liquidity for both buyers and sellers. So you think of the stock market, that's where we're trying to go, but for privately
Yeah.
held businesses, not publicly traded companies.
Yeah.
Can we get there? We're not sure, but we're working on it.
Yeah. For business owners of thinking about selling but unsure if this is the right time, what advice would you give to them?
You know, you can't,
Yeah.
most people haven't even, um, can't figure out how to time the stock market.
Yeah.
And that is as transparent as you can get, right?
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before, private businesses are not transparent. There's no like marketplace we can go to
Yeah.
see, hey, are you up or down? It's really dependent on your individual business
Yeah.
and your marketplace. So do
Yeah.
not try to figure out if it's the right time to sell. You
Yeah.
can't time it for the highest price. But I
Yeah.
would just say start with the moment you start daydreaming, you caught yourself daydreaming about what would life be like after owning this business?
Yeah.
Like what would be next? I will tell you, you've probably been about a year to 2 years
Yeah.
already at that point where you're struggling and you probably were going in that direction to move. So the moment you consciously recognized it, you were already in the middle of this transition. Don't wait another year or 2 years to finally do something about it. The moment you think about it is the moment you should do something. And you can always reach out to us at ASPIRA Business Brokers, or any business broker that that you can trust, to have that conversation. At the very minimum, you should know what your business is worth right now, as is, and have a preliminary conversation about what you can do to improve on that value, and within the timeline constraint of when you want to move. Focus on when you want to move, when, and the rest will be taken care of if you have a good advisor to bring in a team like we do with financial advisors, accountants, you name it, lawyers, to help them get their goal on the timeline that they have.
I don't think business owners realize that it takes not only months, sometimes years to actually prepare your business for a great exit.
This is true. This is true. You're not going to make one change in a day, a week later, a month later, immediately have an improved value. Because again, the buyer needs to see the proof in the change that
Yeah.
the long-term income of the business is going to be different for them. The trajectory for them is different. And so it's really focusing on what the buyer sees for
Yeah.
themselves and future income that they can trust they can get out of this
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. Are there any mentor that really stood out for you that you got a lot of value from?
Um, I've had mentors.
Yeah,
I've had a very dear one who was like a father figure um, to me, and he passed away. And it really started out of the engineering side, believe it or not, that mentor
yeah,
while in high school.
yeah,
And uh, mentors are very valuable in that they bring their years of experience and mistakes to
yeah,
you to help you avoid those mistakes.
yeah,
But most important is that you have someone on your side. You have someone who's an advocate for you, who has your best interest in their heart. They're not getting anything out of you. They're not taking any personal benefit from you. Uh, those are very precious mentors, and you can call them friends. You can call them your board. You can call them whatever you want to call them. But they're the people you can rely on, and those are the people you should be seeking out. Those you
yeah,
can trust. Now, the opinions and advice should be only taken by those who are better off than you.
yeah,
You, you know, don't take an older brother who became a mentor, and yes, he has your, he's got your back. But if he hasn't successfully figured out the thing he's telling you how to work through, then you shouldn't take that advice.
yeah,
So, also in terms of mentors, a lot of times they seemed for me they were accidental.
yeah,
They were in the place and time that we were able to connect. I haven't actually pursued mentors or reached out to
yeah,
them, but I'm sure it's not that hard, to
yeah,
reach out and ask someone for help
yeah,
and get some advice on something. As long as you're not going to waste their time and you're going to implement the thing that they're offering. If you find that good soul who's going to offer that to you, just return the favor by doing what they suggested you do, and get feedback in terms of, hey, I did this. This is the results. They would love that. They would love to be a part of your life. So,
Do you have any advice on anyone who wants to enter the field of business brokerage?
advice on coming in. I would say first and foremost, make sure your heart is in the place to serve. You should be passionate about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. So you should be passionate about the people that you're serving, the entrepreneurs, um, and around the idea of entrepreneurship and promoting it. Um, Personally, otherwise, uh, I think you're in it for the wrong reason. You can make money if you're getting into the business. Obviously, you make money by being very successful at delivering results for your clients. Um, who's ideal to become a business broker? Really, anyone. I think you can learn. There are two major traits, if I can simplify it, for business brokers, and that's really that numbers side of your brain, the accountant type, right? You know how to crunch numbers, you know how to analyze things and such and value. But then there's the salesmanship part, right? That's like a sales brain, creative type, problem solving, negotiating, right? It's that side. If you're only one or the other, then I suggest being part of a team who can help you kind of accomplish that. Most people who get into the profession are former business owners who sold their business and now don't know what to do with themselves and thought they could do it for someone else. And the same kind of approach that they had for their own business, kind of maybe not so polished professional, especially on the numbers side, they kind of parlay that into the next. Um, I would recommend everyone really to be part of a team so you can leverage your strengths in that. But yeah, you should be guided by your interests and your passions. I think you can always learn the rest if you have the right support teams or find the resources. You can always learn and practice that. That's my opinion.
And if you could give your younger self, the young Orlando, a piece of advice, what would it be?
Not to be afraid, not to hold back. I put the brakes on a lot of things, and I just should have pursued it. My life has been a great life. I can't complain. I kind of fell into certain things because the opportunities came up and presented it to me. Um, I think by being continuing to be a good person, always giving your best, people see that you're gonna, opportunities are gonna come your way. It's not luck, right? Lady Luck favors those who are prepared. So those who have done the work will have more luck, if you will, more opportunities present themselves. It just looks like, oh, look at that coincidence. It's not. But what I probably could have done or should have done, I think, is to be more intentional about the direction I wanted to go in life, and I would have probably could have used those years to really accelerate the exponential growth in that particular field, like this one, to be the best in the world. And that's an exciting proposition to be the best. So that's probably what I would recommend to myself.
And what legacy do you hope to leave behind, both in your professional life and personal?
In the professional side, the legacy I would like to leave is to uncover the immense amount of net worth that individuals have in these businesses in the country and around the world. It may be $1 trillion worth of value that are not being captured. It's kind of like Dr. Peter Diamandis, who's talking about some of the innovations in terms of capturing energy from the sun. And he said that sun on one day, 1 hour, is giving us enough electric energy, enough energy to power the entire world or something like that for a year. But we don't know how to capture that. So we're just not capturing this value in these privately held businesses, small and medium size, that I think would possibly dwarf the publicly traded companies, stock markets, and the equity, uh, the um, the values that are there, the capitalization that's there. So that's my goal, my vision for the legacy in the professional world. On the personal side, you know, I am inspired to look truly long term for the world, and on the private side of my own children, uh, my legacy, I'm looking out about 100 years out. That's actually something I've been looking at for a couple of years now, and I'm not looking at my own retirement in my legacy. I'm not looking at my own children and being making sure they're taken care of. I'm looking at my children's children's children and hopefully having them impact the world in a positive way. So I'm only one person with a very limited number of time on this planet to make an impact. But if I can leave a way of living that will impact the world in a positive way with my children and many generations down, I think the world can be very different. And with that, I was inspired by China as a nation, for example. And I think I heard a title of a 100-year plan that they had. And in 100 years, if you look at China, from 2014, if you will, to 2024. Sorry, 1914 to 2000, 1924. Where were they? 1924 to 2024. They are now one of the most powerful nations in the country. Um, it's amazing. And what did they do? How did they change things? Obviously, that's prosperity for them as a nation. But imagine if you can create prosperity for the world. Peace and other things are also important. So hopefully in that inspiration, I can do that for my own children and legacy.
And what's your take on work life balance?
On the what? Work life balance?
Yeah, what do you think about it?
I don't have an answer for that. I've heard this
Yeah,
issue plenty of times. I know that there
yeah,
are those who feel like you should be crazy about one thing to be successful.
yeah,
Um, uh, I think you just got to be better. You got to be
yeah,
more efficient and effective. I that's what I aim to do. I don't know how well that served me.
yeah,
I'm not Jeff Bezos, right? If Jeff or Steve Jobs was crazy, for example, about he didn't have any work life balance. It was just all work, right? It was just, in order to
yeah,
be that impactful, you have to be that crazy about it and that
yeah.
driven. I again, it seems like that's true, but I like to think that if you're more efficient with your time, that you can be just as impactful.
Yeah. Man, especially with all the people who are distracted right now with technology. You don't need to be the best, you just need to be not as distracted at them, at this point. Especially in
Yes,
my generation, yeah.
yes, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, that's probably a solve that problem first. All the
Yeah.
distractions you have.
You know,
Tracking.
when I'm looking at the other people in my age group, I just see how I'm gonna own a lot of things in the future because of how they are, and I'm not. It's crazy.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, you can be much more competitive. Yeah,
yeah.
if you're not distracted,
Uh,
focused.
and since man, you you were saying something,
Nope.
yeah. And since we're nearing the end of the podcast, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at aspirabrokers.com. Aspira is ASPIRA. Aspira, by the
Yeah,
way, is the root word of aspiration. And
yeah,
that's what we're about. We're helping buyers and sellers and entrepreneurs reach their aspirations. That's
yeah.
why we came up with Aspira, and website aspirabrokers.com. You can find more information about us there. Reach out by email or phone or social media. We are not that active, but LinkedIn's a good place too.
Yeah. You should be more active on LinkedIn. It's an amazing place to network.
It is,
Anyway,
and that,
yeah,
another example of why we're stuck in the Stone Ages. But it doesn't impact our. Amazingly, it doesn't impact our business. We're able to be very profitable and grow and serve so many people. Can you imagine what we could do if we actually did what we are supposed to
yeah.
do?
And again, thank you for joining me on the New World podcast.
Thanks. It was a great talk. I hope this was helpful.
It was. That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming New World. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicynics.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.